This is an RevoTV7.com production. A short story by Johnny Griffith, architect of chaos, builder of truth. Based on true events. The Joe Randall Archives. Do you ever wonder what goes into someone's mind before they break? Before the headlines scream? Before the archive is sealed? Joe Randall did. He wondered every day. Not because he wanted to be remembered, but because he wanted to be heard. The hallway smelled like bleach and cafeteria grease. Joe walked with his head down, backpack slung low, hoodie up. He passed the trophy case, golden statues of other people's victories. He passed the counselor's office, door closed, lights off. He passed the classroom where it all began. Inside, the teacher was already talking. "Joe," Mr. Halberd said, "you're late again." Joe didn't answer. He slid into his seat, third row from the back, next to the window. Outside, the sky was gray. Inside, the laughter started. "Yo, Randall! You bring your invisibility cloak today? Bet he sleeps in a coffin." "Freak." Joe stared at the desk. Scratched initials. A dried gum stain. He opened his notebook. Not for class, for the archive. Entry number 147, date October 3rd. Subject Matthew, Tyler, and Shane. Incident, verbal harassment during first period. Response, none. Teacher ignored. Counselor absent. Feeling, numb. At lunch, Joe sat alone. He didn't eat, he wrote. Malik slid into the seat across from him. "You ever gonna talk to me again?" Malik asked. Joe looked up. His eyes were tired, not red, not teary, just hollow. "I'm writing," Joe said. "You always writing." "What is that, a manifesto?" Joe paused, then smiled. But it wasn't joy, it was recognition. "It's an archive," he said, "of everything they don't see." Malik leaned back. "You good, bro?" Joe nodded. "Just tired." After school, Joe walked home. 7 blocks, past the liquor store, past the boarded-up church, past the house with the broken fence. His house was loud. Kids screaming, TV blaring. His mother on the phone arguing with her boss. Joe went straight to his room, closed the door, locked it. He opened the shoebox under his bed. Inside, his father's note. "I want something else." The counselor's report. Student appears withdrawn. Recommend observation. A folded page titled Closure. He added a new entry. Entry number 148, date October 3rd. Subject, Malik incident. Asked if I'm okay. Response, I said I'm tired. Feeling, grateful. But it won't change anything. Joe sat on the edge of his bed. The sun was setting. Orange light spilled across the floor like blood. He whispered to himself, "They only notice when you stop performing." The Randall house was loud. Not joyful loud, survival loud. 7 people crammed into 4 rooms. 1 mother, 6 children. No father. Joe was the second to last. His younger sister, Amari, was 5. She still asked about Daddy. Joe never answered. "Joe, can you help me with the dishes?" His mother's voice was hoarse. She'd just come home from her 3rd job, overnight cleaning at the hospital. Joe nodded. He didn't speak much at home. Words felt expensive. The kitchen was dim. A single bulb flickered above the sink. Joe scrubbed plates while Amari hummed a cartoon theme behind him. His mother sat at the table, counting coins. "Rent's due Friday," she muttered. "I swear, if that landlord raises it again." Joe dried his hands and walked to his room. He didn't say goodnight. He didn't need to. Inside his room, the shoebox waited. He opened it. His father's note. "I want something else." A photo of the family, before the fracture. A receipt from the pawn shop. Joe stared at the receipt. It was dated 2 weeks ago. The item, used firearm, registered. He didn't touch it, just looked. Then he wrote, Entry 149, date October 4th. Subject, home incident. Mother exhausted. Sister still asking questions. Response, silence. Feeling, heavy. The next morning, Joe skipped breakfast. He walked to school early. The halls were empty. The classroom door was unlocked. He sat in his usual seat. 3rd row. Window side. He opened his notebook. Wrote 1 line. Today, the archive ends. The bell rang. Joe didn't flinch. He was already at his locker, staring at the dent in the metal door, left by someone's boot last week. He opened it slowly. Inside, a spiral notebook labeled The Archive, a folded receipt from the pawn shop, a photo of his family, torn at the corner. He touched none of it. Just stared. "Yo, Randall." Tyler's voice echoed down the hallway. You writing your little death poems again? Joe didn't respond. He closed the locker, walked past them. Freak, Shane muttered. Bet he's got a shrine in his closet. Joe kept walking. But inside, he was writing. Entry, 150, date, October 5th. Subject, Tyler. Shane incident, verbal harassment at locker. Response, ignored feeling, pressure building in class. Mr. Halberd was lecturing about the Cold War. Fear, he said, was the weapon. Not bombs, not guns, just fear. Joe raised his hand. Sir, he said quietly, what happens when fear turns inward? The room went silent. Mr. Halberd blinked. That's a good question, Joe. We'll come back to that. They didn't. At lunch, Joe sat alone again. Malik approached, tray in hand. You ever think about leaving? Malik asked. Joe looked up. Leaving what? This place, this town, this noise. Joe nodded. Every day. Malik leaned in. You know I got your back, right? Joe smiled. But it was the kind of smile that hides a scream. I know. After school, Joe walked home slower than usual. The sky was bruised purple. The wind carried whispers. He passed the pawn shop. The window was dark. The receipt in his pocket felt heavier. At home, Amari was drawing on the wall. His mother was asleep on the couch, still in her hospital scrubs. Joe walked to his room, locked the door, opened the archive. He wrote, They laugh because they don't see the weight. They mock because they don't feel the silence. Tomorrow, the archive speaks. Joe woke before the sun. The house was quiet, too quiet. His mother had left early for her shift. Amari was still asleep, curled up with a stuffed bear, missing one eye. Joe sat at the edge of his bed, staring at the shoebox. Inside, the receipt, the photo, the archive. He opened the notebook. The pages were worn, ink smudged from sweat and grief. He flipped to the last entry. Entry to 151, date, October 6th. Subject, final incident. Silence response, action feeling, resolved. He dressed slowly. Black hoodie, dark jeans, no backpack. He walked to school without music. No earbuds, no distractions. The sky was gray. The wind was still. In the hallway, Malik spotted him. Yo, Joe, you good? Joe paused. Thanks for asking. Malik frowned. You sound weird, man. You sure you're okay? Joe nodded. I just need today to be quiet. Malik hesitated. All right. Hit me later, yeah? Joe smiled. Yeah. He entered the classroom early. Mr. Halberd was setting up the projector. Morning. Joe, you're early? Joe nodded. Wanted to see the room empty. Halberd chuckled. Well, enjoy the peace while it lasts. Joe sat in his usual seat. Third row. Window side. He opened the archive, tore out the final page, folded it, placed it on the desk. The bell rang. Students filed in. Laughter, backpacks, noise. Joe didn't move. Didn't speak. Mr. Halberd began the lesson. Today we're discussing systems. How they fail, how they fracture. Joe looked up. What happens when the system ignores the fracture? Halberd paused. Joe, that's a powerful question. Joe nodded. It's the only one that matters. The rest is silence. Not described, not dramatized, just silence. Later that day, the school was evacuated. The media arrived. The headlines screamed, but the archive remained. Malik found it in Joe's desk. He opened the final page. I didn't want to be remembered. I wanted to be heard. The school was closed. Yellow tape wrapped around the entrance like a warning no one heeded. News vans parked outside. Reporters whispered words like tragedy, senseless, unthinkable. But Malik knew better. He had seen the signs. He had asked the questions. He had been ignored too. Inside the counselor's office, boxes were being packed. We did everything we could, the counselor said to the principal. Did we? The principal replied. He never said anything. He said plenty. You just didn't listen. Malik sat in the hallway staring at Joe's locker. It was still dented, still scratched, still silent. He opened it. Inside the archive, a folded page labeled Closure. A photo of Joe's family torn at the corner. Malik opened the notebook. The handwriting was sharp, precise, painful. This is not a scream. This is a whisper no one answered. Malik walked into the classroom. It was empty now. Desks overturned, bullet holes patched, but the air still held the weight. He sat in Joe's seat. Third row. Window side. He opened the final page. I didn't want to be remembered. I wanted to be heard. The media didn't print that. They printed his grades, his silence, his hoodie. They called him troubled. They called him a mystery. They never called him ignored. Malik stood at the memorial. Candles flickered. Photos lined the wall. Joe's picture was missing. He placed the archive on the table. Open to the first page. Entry 001. Subject: silence incident. Daily response: none feeling hollow. The news cycle moved fast. Tragedy at local high school. Community in shock. Questions remain, but Joe's name was barely mentioned. Not because they forgot, but because they didn't want to remember. Malik sat in his room staring at the archive. The pages were heavy, not with ink, with truth. He flipped to entry 001. Subject: silence incident. Daily response: none feeling hollow. He read every page, every insult, every ignored report, every unanswered whisper. At school, the counselor's office was empty. Mr. Halberd was placed on leave. The hallway where Joe walked was repainted. The dented locker was replaced, but Malik knew you can't repaint silence. Joe's mother sat at the kitchen table. Bills piled high. Amari played quietly in the corner. He was always quiet, she said to the social worker. But he helped. He never complained. The social worker nodded. Did he ever say he was hurting? She shook her head. He didn't have time to hurt. Malik visited her the next day. He brought the archive. I think you should read this, he said. She opened it. Her hands trembled. He wrote all this? Malik nodded. He was trying to speak. She read the final entry aloud. I didn't want to be remembered. I wanted to be heard. She closed the notebook, held it to her chest. Then let's make sure they hear him. The school board held a meeting. Malik stood at the podium. You ignored him. You ignored all of us. This isn't about one boy. It's about a system that punishes silence. He placed the archive on the table. Read it. Then ask yourselves, how many more archives are waiting? Weeks passed. The headlines faded. The school reopened. The hallway was quieter now, not out of respect, out of fear. Malik sat in the library surrounded by silence. He had printed copies of the archive, bound them, labeled them, the Joe Randall Archive, a study in silence. He emailed it to every teacher, every counselor, every board member. Some replied. Most didn't. In class, Mr. Halberd returned. He looked older, grayer. Today, he said, we're going to talk about systems and how they fail. Malik raised his hand. They don't just fail, they forget. Halberd nodded. You're right. Joe's mother received a letter from the school board. It offered condolences and a scholarship in Joe's name. She read it once, then placed it in the shoebox. She added a new item, a photo of Joe, smiling. Before the silence, Amari asked one night, "Where's Joe?" Her mother paused. He's somewhere quiet now. Amari nodded. He was always quiet. Malik stood at the edge of the football field. The school had built a bench in Joe's honor. It read, in memory of Joe Randall. May we never ignore the quiet ones again. Malik sat down, opened the archive, read the final entry aloud. I didn't want to be remembered. I wanted to be heard. And in that moment, Joe was. Word of the author, Johny Griffith, architect of chaos, builder of truth. This story is not fiction. It is ritual. It is confrontation. It is based on a real event. Names have been changed. The silence has not. I did not write this to entertain you. I wrote this because they won't. Because they won't talk about the boy who asked for help and was told to ignore it. Because they won't talk about the systems that punish the quiet ones. Because they won't talk about depression. Not the clinical kind. Not the kind that wears a hoodie and smiles when you ask if he's okay. Joe Randall lived with persistent depressive disorder, what clinicians call dysthymia, a slow, quiet erosion of the self. He showed signs of social withdrawal, emotional blunting, and chronic neglect trauma. But no one asked, no one listened. And when he finally spoke, it was too late. This is not a story about violence. It is a story about silence, about what happens when the world demands performance from the broken, about what happens when the archive is ignored. I am not here to make you feel better. I am here to make you feel something. Because numbness is how this began. If you are reading this and you feel unseen, you are not alone. If you are reading this and you've ignored someone's silence, you still have time to listen. This is not a scream. This is a whisper no one answered. Until now. Johny Griffith, architect of chaos, builder of truth. Subscribe on YouTube. Visit RevoTV7.com for premium content.